life coach, a life on life's terms coach. So this morning is our soul stories, and this soul stories would be like, you know, communicating something that when I talk about things, oftentimes, our ego naturally wants to push some thoughts and ideas away. This camera isn't looking right. Anyway, so our ego will naturally want to push some thoughts and ideas away. But what we want to do is we want to embrace these thoughts and ideas because, it is true that some things are not what we want to live. Honestly, I'm having to fix this. I thought I had my notes up here and I don't. Good morning, Adib. How are you? I hope you're doing well. It's interesting. Hello, Mom. Well, I am a mom. That is true. I am a mom. So yeah, so I got my notes up now. So we're going to talk about those soul stories today about, sometimes we can identify better with the story than we can with what I may say, because like I said, our ego sometimes naturally wants to push things away. I'm glad you're cool. I'm cool too. I've got my air conditioning on. I'm your mom? Okay. All right then. So we're going to talk more about compatibility today, and we have a story to go along with that, because like I said, sometimes people relate more with the stories than they do with what the talk is. So I kind of like on Sundays, compatibility was our topic of this week. So on Sundays, hello, Mr. Summonvitter. I'm glad you could make it today. Thank you. We've been talking about compatibility this week. It's not just compatibility in romantic relationships. That's amazing. That's where we think first off, right? But sometimes some things just aren't compatible with us. So on Monday, we started with talking about, are you compatible with yourself? Because a lot of times we don't understand, if we don't understand what our values are, what our likes and what our needs are, then we're not able to express them. And sometimes people just hope that it will work out. I hear oftentimes, happy Friendship Day. Awesome. Happy Friendship Day to you too. So I'm glad that you all are my friends here. I'm glad that you joined me here because you have other places you could be, but you're here with me. So thank you. Thank you. So happy Friendship Day to you too. So when we know compatibility within ourselves, we're not asking, am I compatible with them? And trying to mold ourselves into being compatible with somebody else. But am I compatible with myself? What does myself want? Because sometimes we don't even consider ourselves. So we'll give people just a couple of more minutes to come in, but I know that you may have missed Monday or Wednesday because we kind of just expanded. What I do is I pick a topic weekly, and then we just keep expanding on that topic because repetition strengthens and confirms. And so here we've got an amazing group of people, and we are, very supportive group of people. Everyone is so nice and kind here. So just keep in the comments, nice and kind. And remember that we don't talk about religion. We don't talk about politics. We don't talk about my age. We don't talk about my dating stats, those kind of things. So I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I feel like others will join, but I have always a summary from my notes. So I want to get started on the notes so we can get into the story time, okay? All right, so we've talked about compatibility this week. Monday, discussing compatibility with ourselves. All right, here we go. Thank you, Mr. Summonvitter. So, and it's my hope that this was thought-provoking and that it helped you consider who and what you are compatible with. Like I said, it wasn't just about romantic relationships. It's about sometimes our families, sometimes our jobs, sometimes our friends and our partners. So they used to tell me reason, season, and a lifetime sometimes, and that used to really make me mad. But I learned that some relationships, whatever status it is, whether it's any of those and above, they are a reason, season, and a lifetime. I talked about evolving. I always talk about evolving because we are evolving. And in the old days, people used to get a job and have it for 40, 50 years and retire from it. But that isn't the story for a lot of people these days. So things are moving fast, and sometimes it seems like things are disposable. So we'll be expanding more on that next week. So we discussed that compatibility, and many of us weren't taught how to navigate the knowledge of knowing what we're compatible with and look to see what attracted us outside and given all that we had without consideration of compatibility, right? Until it was too late. Till it was too late. And so then, you know, our values had been violated, maybe, and or at least not stated. Maybe we didn't even state our values until we get to the end of whatever it is. Thank you, Mr. Samenbeer. And so we have to learn to state our values, to know what they are, and the adventure we take to learning ourselves and being able to express ourselves is the best adventure that we can take. So we discussed how values, on Wednesday, we discussed how values are an important component to compatibility and trust, right? Compatibility and trust. So we may feel deceived if these values weren't acknowledged or stated early on. And that deception may have us running in the patterns of protection and projection instead of honesty and reflection. Okay, so getting to know ourselves and others takes time and it takes energy. A lot of times we may come into relationships with expectations of what things will or should look like without knowing if the other person has the capacity to, stand up to our values for what our ideal relationship is, and whether it be work, family, friends, and of course our partners. We don't know if they have the same value system, if they want the same things we want. But a lot of times we're just physically attracted or feel a familiarity that makes it feel like home. And so we go in way too fast. Good morning, Dominic. It's good to see you this morning. I hope that you're doing well this Super Sunday. So when we consciously head into relationships without knowing if we're going into them to fulfill one of the values we have not claimed for ourselves, is when I talk about how we've set a bar that we cannot reach. Because sometimes if we don't know we have this value ourselves, and we have this bar that we're expecting other people to reach, and we don't know how to state it or express it, then they don't know. So we're setting ourselves and them up. We're proving to ourselves once again that we aren't valued, and we're setting them up to fail as well, so that we can prove that we aren't valued. That makes sense? I hope so. So what this means is that we may have an idea for ourselves and healed misplaced trust and love. We may have an intention and motivation that someone is healing us. Someone else can heal us when we have that intention and motivation from misplaced trust that someone else can heal us. So taking the pain away of appreciating us like another person did not, taking that pain away. So we want someone else to appreciate us because somebody else did not. A lot of times that's why people bounce from relationship to relationship. What's the thing we say when we don't feel our value is, I feel not appreciated. I feel taken for granted. These kind of things. And maybe we didn't state what our expectations were. No, I don't stay in New York. I stay in Mexico most of the time. I'm from Texas, so I'm in Texas sometimes. So it is less likely than, hey, Craig Burns. Okay. So it's less likely that we're choosing from a healthy place when we choose somebody, just based on, we just want somebody to appreciate us. And they look like they appreciate us at first. Oh, thank you, Mr. Samenvitter. I appreciate that. And that a place that creates a healthy relationship, but instead from what feels familiar, because some people just keep going to what feels familiar and they don't realize it, because in the beginning, people show up as their best selves. So I myself have done this and have worked with people who don't know what they want. There was a time in my life when I didn't know what I wanted, and I had to learn. And until I was asked the question in a safe setting with someone that had no interest and that I had no interest in impressing, could I honestly say I didn't know and learn what I didn't know and grow? Dominic, how do you know you're being appreciated or being used? That's a good question, Dominic. So how we know if we're being appreciated or being used? First off, when healing takes place, because a lot of times people feel used in every relationship. And I had a client probably about 6 months ago, and she started a new relationship, and we had been working together on her self-esteem. She had anxious attachment. So, first off, knowing, do I have anxious attachment? We're going to have a story here later that kind of touches on anxious attachment. So we worked on her anxious attachment, her realizing that she is the prize, that she doesn't have to keep texting. Oh, thank you for those hearts. That she doesn't have to keep texting someone, that if they don't text her when she wants them to text her, that doesn't mean that they don't love her or care about her, or that they're not thinking about her. That people, healthy relationship people, have their focus on their jobs when they're doing their jobs. They have their focus on what they're doing. Good morning, beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. So that's what healthy people do. They're not obsessing at their job. I've been an obsessor, so I'm not saying that, I was not healthy at the time. So healthy people are staying where their hands are, doing what's in front of them. And I had to learn how to stay where my hands are and doing what's in front of me, because, when we put so much into a relationship, and that's typically everything that we're living for, that we're doing for, that we can't, we are just obsessed. That's not a healthy love. That's not a healthy relationship. So we're going to be looking for evidence that we are loved or not loved. Because if we haven't healed a place in ourselves that didn't feel loved and didn't feel appreciated, then we're going to continue seeking that outside of ourselves, but we have to have it within to know the difference, Dominic. I hope that that's helpful. And so for me, that meant healing, and it meant being able to, heal the inner child wounds of when we don't feel seen or feel heard, or when we feel like we're having to do everything for everybody else. And this is why a lot of people feel like they're being used, is because their early on algorithm, to put it in another way, their neural pathways, but the early on algorithm, their nervous system, taught them that they needed to do certain things to be seen and heard. So they performed and they did certain things. They become what people wanted them to become so that they could be accepted. And so if we have to change our neural pathways to a healthier way. Because if we're living to be accepted, then when we don't feel accepted, we're going to be tripping, as my son used to say. We're going to be feeling like we're going through withdrawals, or we're going to feel like we're hopeless, that it doesn't matter what we do. So I'm going to tell the story here pretty soon, and let me know if you relate with it, Dominic. But certainly, if we feel like every relationship we go to is, that we're used. And this client told me, she said, this relationship feels different. I reminded her, you are the prize. When she wanted to text him, I told her, you text me, so that I could see clearly about when she's obsessing and when she's doing this. So it's like, you text me. So she had, that when she had to text me, then she wasn't looking for the same thing from me as she was from him. So we got to break that down. So she texted me. And then she got to learn, I am the prize. She got to learn not to be so anxious when she wasn't, with him. They did move in together later. They did move in together. They're living together now. And the thing is, before he moved in, she said to him in a flippant kind of way, from her, back of her mind, her ego, her protective state, she says to him, well, you're probably just moving in so you'll be closer to your friends. And he looked at her like, are you crazy? And she could see that look on his face. And she goes, no, I was just kidding. And then when she talked to me, though, thankfully she was honest. And she said, I wasn't just kidding, though. And I said, why did you say that then? And she said, well, because every other relationship I'd been, what? Used. And I said, isn't that interesting that, first off, our conversation began with she didn't feel needed in the relationship. So I'd left that part out in the beginning, but that I'm letting you know that. And so when I re-said what she told me, I said, isn't it interesting that you said that you didn't feel needed in the beginning of this, and now that he's moving in, you're afraid of being used? And she's, and I said, when we put neediness and used together, so, and long answer to you, Dominic, is when we feel needed in the beginning of a relationship, that we have to be needed to be seen, then and we're not being loved for who we are. Because what do we all want? We all want to be loved for who we are. We all want to be cared about for who we are. We all want to be seen and heard, whether, like I said, it's work or friendships or what have you. We don't just want to be the tag along, because we feel like a tag along in so many things that we're not really living our life to the fullest. So if you feel like you have to be needed in a relationship to get that appreciation. Hello, random. So let me see where I was at this. So remembering you are the prize, and then you won't be like looking for somebody else to acknowledge that. Because when you know that, you don't need somebody else to acknowledge that. Then you can come wholly and healthy into a relationship. So, So I didn't know, and I had to learn what I didn't and grow. And this is what the part that I call an adventure. You know, the adventure we take to ourselves is the best adventure we're going to take, because we've bent ourselves into pretzels, some of us, for other people, for everyone else. So getting to know ourselves, what am I compatible with, right? So knowing what our intentions and motivations are, you know, and the whys in a relationship are important, so we don't feel led and compromised or even tricked later. Because that's usually what happens, is we go in just really fast, really deep, and then later we're like, why did I do this? Why is this happening? Why is that happening? If we learn in the beginning to navigate within ourselves and quit looking outside of ourselves, finding evidence, because a lot of times some of the stuff is just basic stuff, but whatever we feel like we want that day. How secure do I feel this day? So insecurity being an insight. If I may ask, what happened with your relationship? Well, it's been a series of relationships, and so I had to grow to know what it was that I wanted, because I was navigating, obviously we broke up, but I got to learn. It was a catalyst for my growth. So I don't think that that person is a villain. We're Facebook friends, but we don't talk to each other or anything. Sometimes they like my statuses, mostly not, because I think they're probably, but I don't need their input. You know, I used to, when I was young, I needed to keep somebody on the back burner because I was insecure. But as I've gotten older, I don't need to keep people on the back burner. You know, I don't have to communicate with those old exes to remind me how good I am, because really that is what happens, right? Is they are catalysts for my growth, but they were a part of my journey. I wouldn't be who I am now without them. So I'm grateful for them teaching me, and it hurt. I'm not saying that they taught me in a nice, gentle, loving way, because the things hurt that I got to grow through. I had to quit dismissing myself. I had to quit discarding my own feelings. I had to realize, what am I compatible with, rather than trying to fit in all the time, feeling like I was trying to fit in. So that adventure was amazing, to get to take it to myself. I read books, I had loving support, and I had all kinds of things to help me remember who I am. And that's what I try to help other people do. Gino, I'm single now, hallelujah. I was in an abusive relationship with a contentious woman. There's a lot of that. You know, they used to just think men were the abusers, but there are some women abusers now, you know, we've come to see. I was on Team Johnny Depp, you know, and so I totally understand. Were you able to do some healing work, though? Because it's just leaving the relationship in itself doesn't heal. So the healing work, because abusive people are transferring anger to you, they're transferring their pain to you. And so we don't turn around and transfer that, or so that we don't turn around and you know, try not to be that. Because that was the thing, is that in teaching, you know, what I try to teach is that we have to heal these don't wants. Heal the don't wants. I don't want this to happen, because I know you don't want to get another abusive relationship. I don't either, but I have changed my energy within myself. And that comes with that healing part, because today's topic is, what am I attracting? You know, because I've had people tell me, well, I hope I don't attract another narcissist. I hope I don't attract another this. I hope I don't attract, and we will attract those. We live in a universe, and so people are going to be attracted. If you've got a beautiful light, All kinds of people is going to be attracted to you. It's your job to remember what your values are, what our values are, and to distinguish who's healthy and who's not healthy, who can communicate with me. When we get into relationships and we're making stories up to prove things, either sometimes we go to the negative proof, sometimes we go to the positive proof. I used to like songs. We talked about how sometimes the songs form my relationships. My first love, I used to have this song called, it was by Keith Whitley, saying, "You said it best when you say nothing at all." No, no, no. I would be making stories up to fill in the blanks. When we're in relationships where we have to fill in the blanks, that's a scary place to drift in because you don't know, random. Completely agree. I had started to talk to someone and I haven't really caught the emotions that I'd categorize as worth staying in. That's good. That's good. Random. However, I guess what I'm trying to say here is I don't want me to leave, but I don't want to stay either. What's about honoring yourself? Because that relationship, if you're getting, listening to ourselves, that's so important for you, random, is to be able to listen to yourself, because that's how you honor yourself and you honor someone else. Because we will all feel tricked, right, if we compromise. So it would be a compromise to stay somewhere where you don't feel comfortable, where your spidey senses, or you're feeling like this really isn't what I want, because it's not going to get better. Relationships take work, and we have to make sure that we want to be in it, and it takes time. And when you got somebody who's maybe trying to move too fast and you're just trying to be chill, then that's maybe a dangerous sign. That could be a red flag, and that's kind of like our story talks about. So I hope you're going to stick around for the story. Dominic, manipulation is horrible in a relationship. It is. And it helps us to be able to understand and spot it in the beginning. That's not, and when we heal, we're not just looking for, are they trying to manipulate me? And that kind of thing. So it's an energy. When we get the healing done, then we're not worried about everybody trying to manipulate us that don't want. Because I was in a relationship with somebody who was, that was so scared of being manipulated, they couldn't join wholeheartedly. And when I say that somebody may not have the capacity, that's what I mean, is if somebody's holding back because they're so afraid of being manipulated, or they're so afraid of this, then healing the fear of manipulation is important. That's not to say there's not manipulation. And that's not to say that people won't try to manipulate you, because they will. But like, Random was saying earlier, when you can kind of sense some things, it's important to listen, and to yourself, to honor yourself and honor them too, so neither of you feel tricked later or manipulated into the relationship. But making sure that we heal those parts of us that feel like it's going to be a manipulation, and get clear about what our values are and what we're looking for in a relationship. Whether it's a job, like with a job, I sit here when I interview for a job, or I'm thinking about a job, this is what I want, this is what I want to make. I'm self-employed, so if y'all need a coach, look for my email in the description. But, when I was looking for a job, and the last job that I left, we were just no longer compatible. That was it, And when we can recognize we're not compatible, we don't have to make out as a victim-villain stance. That's not to say that they didn't, neither of us did throw it off stuff, but about healing is about letting that stuff go. It doesn't mean about returning. Healing doesn't mean I'm going to let that stuff go so I can return and subject myself to more. Healing means I'm not going to let that have power over me. Random. It started off pretty nice. I thought it was just helping a friend, and then it became more, and I never really wanted it. And now we're like 5 months in, and I don't think I can do this anymore. Yeah. Do you think that it might have been different if it would have started off slow? Because that's going to be a lot of how our story, goes today, the story that I created. So it's so cool that you're here, and that you're going to get to hear that story, because that's how the story starts. So hang in here, because it's much like this. And so I feel like you're going to relate with that story. And that's typical what a lot of relationships do. And it could be that that person has anxious attachment, and they're going to make more and more demands manipulation, if you will, to try to heal themselves through you, but you can't heal them. They have to heal themselves. A lot of people jump into relationships. They've learned in this family patterns, maybe they're a rescuer, so they rescue a lot. Maybe they've learned to avoid, these family patterns. Sometimes these things play a huge role. We think because we get in these grown bodies that we've overcome these things, but until we heal it, it's still in the back of our mind, and it still is what's driving us, that protective part of us, because that protective part has been with us. That protective part's been with us our whole life. It didn't go anywhere just because your body got grown, So having these values in the beginning, what you value, knowing what your values are, and we talked about those on Wednesday's video. If you want to catch that, I don't think it's too long, but you can always fast forward and reverse and all of this, if you don't want to hear the live talk. So having these values in the beginning, though we may not instantly get what we want, this is that instant gratification. A lot of people after 3 months, or at least I used to, I would break up with a person, and I would break up. They would break up with me sometimes. We would break up in about 3 months. I'd think, okay, I think I'm ready to date again, without realizing that the pain of that breakup, and I would just hope that the next one would be better. But really, that breakup and the breakup before it and the breakup before that was all compounded. You are very welcome, Randon. So it felt like they kept compounding. And so we talked about also was our picker broke. Hello, Ramon Vallejos from New Mexico. It's good to see you here. So having the values in the beginning, though we may not instantly get what we want. So when you start having coffee with somebody, or you go to dinner with somebody, talking about values, a lot of people want to hide because they're trying to impress their date. Don't hide the values, because if you hide them now, you'll regret it later, right? I had to learn this the hard way, because I learned a lot of my lessons the hard way. The older I get, the less hard it gets, because I've learned I don't want my butt whooped. So I set myself up. I had to realize I was the common denominator. Nobody was tricking me. I had eyes, ears, nose, mouth, throat. I could say what I needed to say. I chose not to hear some of the things that were definitely red flags. So I had to take accountability. We talked about accountability last week, So knowing what I chose in the past, helps me to choose differently in the future, but healing the pain of those choices takes the power out of me navigating what I don't want. So I've made my list. I know what I want. So when I see it, I'm going to know it, and not try to make other people fit in that description. Does that make sense? It's not just a physical description. It's an energetic description, because what kind of energy? So I hope that that's helpful. So having these values in the beginning, though we may not instantly get what we want, that person that we're trying to impress will not have us hurt or compromise in our beliefs that we've worked so hard to gain for ourselves, and give another person, institution, or what have you, the power to disarm us. Thank you. You are very welcome. Thank you for subscribing. Hama, is it Hama? I appreciate that. Thank you for subscribing. I hope I'm saying that right. I'm down in Mexico, so the G is silent. So it could be Jama. But thank you, Dominic. So basically, keep your friends close, but put your enemies closer. LOL. Not really. No, that's not really it either, Dominic. Because we don't subject ourselves. What we do is we don't let our enemies carry the power over us anymore, is what it is. We can sometimes be the enemy of ourselves when we subject ourselves. Thank you, Random. I appreciate that. I appreciate you all so much for subscribing. I hope that if this resonates, that you all will subscribe, and even hit that notification bell, because I come on Monday nights. Tomorrow night I'll be back on here. And then I come on Friday nights, but I come on Wednesday mornings and Sunday mornings. So thank you for subscribing. So next week we'll be discussing, so tomorrow night we're going to start a discussion on knowing your belief system as your internal map to your life's adventures. Knowing your belief system, because that's what guides you in your life's adventures. And what do you choose? So empowerment is knowing what we're choosing, you know, and then being able to navigate from that and not beat ourselves up. We're human beings, you know. Raphael, what do you think about? Okay. That's not our topic today, Raphael, but you're welcome, Raffaello, you're welcome to stay, but we're talking about compatibility. We're not talking about that. Thank you, Dominic. So in summary today, if you came on late, in summary today, compatibility with yourself and others is what we're talking about today. And I have a story after this, so y'all hang in here and stay. So see if you relate with the story, because some of the things I'm maybe saying, some people might be like, yeah, but, because when people first talk to me about codependency, I'd be like, no, because that's our ego that's saying, no, I'm not, having a defect, but we're human beings. We have things that we can grow through. We can go through it or grow through it. So this week we've talked about compatibility, beginning on Monday with compatibility with ourselves. My hope is that this conversation has been thought-provoking and has encouraged you to consider not only who's compatible with you, but who you're compatible with, right? So many of us weren't taught how to recognize compatibility. We were taught to notice what attracted us. We gave ourselves wholeheartedly to people, jobs, friendships, or even belief systems without ever stopping to ask whether they were actually compatible with our values. Sometimes we don't discover what our values are until they're violated. And this is where we're going from, I don't want this. But we have to heal those don't wants, that pain of those things that we don't want to happen. And that doesn't mean subjecting yourself to it again. It means not letting it have power to drive you in your future relationships, that you're more focused on what you do want so that you can create, bond with what I do want rather than just trying to push away what I don't want, because we live in a world of attraction and repulsion. So sometimes we don't discover what our values are until they're violated. Or at the very least, until we're upset because they were never acknowledged or communicated in the first place. Because sometimes we're upsetting people when people are upsetting us, and we didn't start talking about values in the beginning. If you go into a relationship, talking about values in the beginning isn't going into the relationship. And I used to do this in my youth, when I was young, is talking about the last relationship, about how they treated me, so that the next relationship would treat me better. That's a form of manipulation too. When we go into a fresh relationship, we want to go in with fresh eyes, or at least I do, because I want a healthy relationship. I made mistakes in my past. I suppose when I get in a relationship with somebody, they're going to have made mistakes in their past. But I want to know what energy they're coming at with me now. Their past isn't my business. My past isn't somebody's business. So I don't think that we need to do that when we have healed those things. So then we know we're not looking for somebody else to heal us from those things. Do you believe that the zodiac signs might play into it? We're both Leos, LOL. I do believe zodiac signs do play into it to a degree. I don't believe that we necessarily, that it's to the rule. You know what I mean? I do believe that we develop certain personalities ourselves under the stars that we were born, but I also believe that because of where we grew up, we all have these different experiences and growth, so that may or may not make us compatible. But yes, thank you. Thanks, Random. We are both Leos. When's your birthday? Mine's coming up this week. So sometimes we don't discover what our values are. Okay, I already said that, until they're violated. Okay, so that's why we talked about values being such an important part of compatibility and trust. When values aren't identified or expressed early on, we may later feel deceived. So that feeling of deception can have us living in the patterns of protection and projection instead of honesty and reflection. Because a lot of people are either oversharing or undersharing in the fear of getting hurt again. And if you go into a relationship with the fear of getting hurt again, you haven't healed from the past relationship. And that's not going into it healthy, because you're going to be looking for evidence. When you heal, you're not looking for evidence. You're looking to grow. You're looking to say, does this person compatible with me? Do we share the same values? What do they like to do? What do I like to do? Rather than what have they healed from? Does their healing from match what I'm healing from? Because really, unless we've talked to a professional or somebody who, is unbiased, have we healed from it? Unless we've done some work. And I know just reading the books itself doesn't help, because I read plenty of books as fast as I could, and then I got out there and I was like, oh no, because I would read the books, say, I got it, then go out there and be like, oh no, I don't got it. So it's a neural pathway type of thing. It's a neural pathway. Is I had to heal my neural pathways, which have to do with expectations. I would be anticipating and strategizing all my relationships, whether it was work, jobs, friends, what have you, because when you grow up in an environment that doesn't feel safe, then sometimes that's what happens is that your central nervous system is always like ready to protect you, And so when we learn to calm and soothe and change those neural pathways, thank you, we will feel like we don't have to protect ourselves. We'll know we're protected. Having faith in a power greater than ourselves helps, rather than putting all of our faith in a person. Having faith in a power greater than ourselves. I don't tell people who, what, or how to believe, but I know for me, that helps me a great deal. That's what I'm looking to align with, is what is natural, not what I'm having to try to fit into, or something, fitting in with me. It's about coming authentically. And I think that happens, but it's not when we're looking for that outside of ourselves, we're searching. It's okay to be a seeker, but seeking yourself first. So getting to know ourselves takes time. Getting to know another person takes time. Yet many of us enter into relationships with expectations of what they should look like without ever knowing whether the other person has the capacity, desire, or even the same vision for the relationship that we have in mind. Sometimes we have our mind made up. We see a person, we have our mind made up, and then it doesn't matter what they say, this is what we want. And then we feel like we're tricked when they don't fit that. So that can happen with family members, it can happen with friendships, work relationships, and certainly with partners. So when we unconsciously enter relationships hoping someone will fulfill a value we haven't yet claimed for ourselves, we often set a bar that no one can realistically reach. So again, remember what those values are. It's honesty, it's trust. Do I have honesty and trust with myself? It takes a while, for us to have honesty and trust with ourselves. So we may have an idea of what love, appreciation, security, or partnership should feel like. But if we haven't healed the misplaced trust or old hurts, we may unknowingly choose someone because we're hoping they'll take away our pain, appreciate us the way someone else didn't, or finally give us the approval we've been searching for. Random, I agree, and I noticed she hasn't gotten over some of her past relationships, and I'm also afraid of being hurt in a relationship. So we're always pushing and pulling, yeah. And a lot of people, somebody asked me, a few weeks ago about a twin flame. That oftentimes is described as a twin flame relationship, speaking of the zodiacs and things. And so that's not a healthy relationship, when we have that push and pull. It's really important to heal ourselves, because I tried to push and pull relationships too. Right, Darth Clorox? That's so true. It's true. It's really a dangerous setup, in the mind. I do believe there's soul connection relationships, but twin flame I don't think is it when you're looking at the push and pull. So many people can claim dysfunction as the twin flame. So the challenge is that when we're still carrying wounds, we're less likely to choose from a healthy place. Instead, we often choose from what feels familiar, and familiar isn't always compatible. Zodiac signs are pseudoscience. I do believe that stars and the planets have a great deal of influence on us on this planet, because the moon, we just got through a full moon, and anybody who works in the police department or the schools and things like this, they'll tell you that the full moon does have energy, and that energy is not a woo-woo. The energy, if we get to know ourselves and our relationship on this planet, this electromagnetic field. If we get to know ourselves, and even that is attraction and repulsion, and that's full of life. Life is full of attraction and repulsion, and in the middle is harmony and discernment. But the thing is that I do believe, like even Jesus, they found Jesus under the stars, whatever. But there is some science to the stars, that science and spirit can mix together. I do believe in that. So I don't know that I would say that, because I know that a lot of us, born under certain signs do carry characteristics to personality. There is. And they all have a power and a strength and just a beauty and a majesty to them. And I think that people don't look at the stars and planets enough, and I don't know everything about all the stars and the planets, but I was out this morning taking brush away from my house, looking at the moon. People know I oftentimes look at the moon and the stars and the majestic, point of it all. It's so majestic. I get up in the morning and I'm like, Your Majesty, because it does have power and it does have strength, because I don't believe there's anything in this world that doesn't have power and have strength. Leo Lee, nobody dies a virgin. Well, there you go. Kurt Cobain. Thank you, Leo Lee. I'm glad to see you today. Thank you, Darth Clorox. I appreciate that. You're so right. There are more than that, but this all comes from ancient Indians and Persians. All right. Well, I think there's a lot of mystics. It also comes from Greeks, the Greek mythology, from Greek, stuff. It also comes from Rome, Italians. There's a lot of, stuff that people didn't know before we had all these digital devices. And these digital devices are great and a part of evolution. But before we had all of that, that's all people had to look at and observe was stars and planets. And, that was it. And I think that that's exciting and great, because someday we're liable to just be resolved to stars and planets if somebody gets crazy and knocks out our energies. Luke, it's good to see you today, Luke. Thank you for joining. I always love what you share. Energy is a thing. We all vibrate. So anyone looking at the tide coming and go again and assuming the moon doesn't affect them if they're 80% water themselves. Yes, exactly. We are. And I know that I've been very emotional with this past moon. What it does is it's not to dictate, it's just a full moon, and invalidate it, because the thing is that what happens is that as we grow and evolve, a lot of things, a lot of memories that we have, I struggled with one, because like I brought my daughter up different than my mother brought me up. And so when we're talking about how also the planets and stars do affect us in the zodiac, but also there's our life experiences. So I brought my daughter up different than my mother brought me up. And so I found myself over this full moon, feeling weepy, because my daughter didn't tell me things that I tell my mother. But the thing was I was codependent and enmeshed with my mother, and I brought my daughter up differently. So she didn't need to tell me those things. So what I got to see is this a real hurt? Because it did feel like it made me weepy. I did get weepy. But then when I processed it to the pen and the paper, it's like, no, your daughter's not codependent. She doesn't have to tell you when she does something or goes somewhere. So I had to realize that it was my old algorithm in my body, my old thought system in my body about what I thought from what was expected of me. But I didn't bring my daughter up that way, so she doesn't have that. So we have to remember that. And that's what that full moon allowed me to grow through. Greeks borrowed all this stuff from the Persians and Indians. Shalajaran, hello. Darth Clorox, interesting theory. I've looked into it. Well, I just like to learn wherever I can learn, Darth Clorox. I'm not trying to separate and divide. That's not what this channel is about at all. Is we just enjoy enjoy each other and what we get to learn. This is where the werewolf myth comes in about the moon and the water and the waves and the ocean. Not for me. I don't have to think about werewolves when I think about the moon and the water and the waves and the ocean. So we all have so many thoughts here, though. Thank you for sharing yours, but we all have so many thoughts here, and so a different relationship. This is why I don't talk about religion and politics on here, because we all have different relationships with our compatibility with ourself and the different relationships. But the fact is, gravity doesn't affect us as those theories claim because we are too small. Alrighty, well, that's not really the topic today, but I appreciate the insight. Look, it's true, the Indians and Persians figured things out thousands of years ago that we can only dream of. They read between the lines. Thank you, Luke. See, I'm learning. I always get to learn something when I come on here, so I'm learning too. I am learning too. So thank y'all for that. So back to compatibility, and this is why I have notes, because I get to learn too. And the werewolf is symbolism for the mood change theory regarding the moon. Oh, well, I've seen the werewolf movies, but I don't think that the werewolf was real. So it was symbolism. It was symbolism, though. So the challenge is that when we're still carrying these wounds, we're less likely to choose from a healthy place. Instead, we often choose from what feels familiar, and familiar isn't always compatible. Thank you, Random. So I know this because I've lived it myself. I've worked with many people who honestly didn't know what they wanted, right? It's a lot of times we just choose with no really, our ego's in the driver's seat, protecting us, because we haven't healed the don't wants. So I didn't know either. It wasn't until someone asked me the question in a safe environment where I had no interest in impressing anyone that I could honestly answer, I don't know. Cosmos. Maybe they existed just like the dinosaurs. The dinosaurs did exist, so maybe there's a lot we don't know. It's an adventure. So, that wasn't the end of the conversation, me saying, I don't know. A lot of times for people, it is the end of the conversation. It was the beginning of the adventure when I said, I don't know. That allows me to grow. That's humility there, is because a lot of times we think we have to know everything. And maybe that's the algorithm that has been set. Kim says, there are days that I don't know what I want. Yeah. And life is an adventure. We always get to decide what we want and don't want. And we can either be just guided along, feeling like we're not really fully, wholly living our life, or we could be observing and learning and growing random. I think that could be subjective due to the fact that we have discovered bones of dinosaurs. We have discovered bones of dinosaurs. I used to live in Granbury, Texas, and they had a place called Dinosaur Valley out there. Luke Oakley. Luke, let me see. I always like what you say. We have to take a leap of faith. There are things out there so glorious that we don't even know what we could wish for them. Yes, it's an adventure to get to discover things, because until our mind's open for it, we won't discover it. All I'm saying is people use blurred lines to make up stuff and push their stories and ideas. Well, thank you, Darth Clark. That's true. People have done that. They have. I think everyone does to a degree, and this is what makes us compatible. This is the whole theory with this story is what's compatible. Because if we all believed and thought alike, this would be a pretty boring place, right? The world and the planet we live on would be pretty boring and dull if we all thought alike. So thank you for sharing those insights today, because I did get to learn something myself with you and Luke. So thank you. Hello, Joseph Leon. So I had the opportunity to learn what I didn't know and to discover what mattered to me. And Kim, thank you for sharing too. And to understand my intentions and motivations. See, because that's the thing that gives us power. When we understand our intentions and motivations for what we are drawn to or what we're not drawn to, so knowing our intentions and motivations. And why in any relationship is important, because it helps to avoid the feeling of being led, compromised, or even tricked later. It doesn't mean we'll always get what we want, because when we can realize it's a catalyst for our growth, because it is an adventure rather than just going on the algorithm of, I'm not going to be tricked. I'm not going to be tricked, because you're going to be too protective. You're going to be too rigid. You're not going to be, you're not going to attract, because we have to learn what we want to attract. Or we're going to keep walking around repulsed. And so the secret is that we're all the same thing. We just think we're not. Absolutely, Luke. When I'm doing my planks in the morning time, I'm like, praying, kind of sending energy to the fathers, the mothers, the sisters and the brothers, the lovers and the friends and the enemies too, because we are all one in the end. We are all one. Some of the things that the enemies can only be our enemies in our mind. Thank you, Joseph Leon. So when we begin with our values, we stop giving another person, a relationship, a workplace, or an institution the power to compromise the beliefs we've worked so hard to establish for ourselves. Good morning, JR. How are you today? We're getting to the story. We're almost to the story, so I'm glad that you're here. Hello, Ware from Arizona. Every AHO is a lesson. Absolutely. It's a catalyst for our growth, isn't it, Luke? We get to learn how I'm going to respond rather than react. Because if I react to something, there's a part in me that fears its truth. But if I understand, if I respond to something, then it's like, it can be true or it cannot be true. Everyone makes sure to create your own support systems. Absolutely. That's what we're talking about, Darth Clorox, is, being compatible with ourselves, and then also then we're going to have those people attracted to us, and we'll accept those people attracted to us. And even though we may not feel the same attraction for someone else, we can honor them and honor ourselves by being honest with ourselves and not trying to push ourselves and just settle, right? I know that I've done that, I've just settled, and then it still doesn't work out, and it's just heartbreaking. So when we begin with our values, we stop giving another person, a relationship, a workplace, or institution the power to compromise the beliefs we've worked so hard to establish for ourselves. So like I said, tomorrow we're going to start talking about beliefs, because a lot of people don't really realize the beliefs that are attached to the energy, like Luke was talking about. Our beliefs are part of that energy field that we're walking around with on this planet. And so this is where attraction and repulsion comes in. And, if you've got a light, you're going to attract those that want to dim your light, and you're also going to attract those that are attracted to your light. But if you waste time on those that want to dim your light, trying to prove you're right, then you're going to be messed up. So this doesn't mean every relationship will work. It means we won't lose ourselves trying to make it work. This brings all of this together. So I want to share the story with you. It's story time. Y'all ready for this? So sometimes you may not relate with what I'm saying about compatibility, but you might relate with this story. So let me know if this story is you. I had a fight with ChatGPT last night, honestly, because I feed stuff in there and then I just want it to put it in order. I'm not trying to get it to create something else. I don't want it changing my words. I don't want it doing, and I had to fight with ChatGPT, asked him 5 times to get this story right, not to rewrite my story. And so, so I fought with them, and I'm like, look, dude, this was fussing with ChatGPT. This was supposed to take less than 30 minutes. I just wanted you to put it in order, not change my words. So I finally got it. So this story is about Sherry and Mark. Let's take a deep breath. Ready? Let's take a deep breath in. And get grounded. Release. Breathe. Release. One more, and then we're going to start the story. Keep breathing. And release. Here we go. All right, let me tell you about Sherry and Mark, because I think there's a lot of us who have been one, the other, or maybe even both at different times in our lives. Sherry had recently come out of a relationship that had slowly worn her down. It wasn't that there weren't good times, but somewhere along the way, she found herself constantly trying to earn approval. She remembered what it felt like in the beginning, when she felt appreciated. But over time, she questioned herself more than she questioned the relationship. She began wondering if she was enough, if she was attractive enough, if she was interesting enough, or just simply enough. Then she met Mark. Mark was handsome, confident, charming. He knew exactly what to say. He would tell Sherry how hot she was, how lucky he was to be with her, how much he loved walking into a restaurant with her because people noticed them. He'd smile and say, "Look at them looking at us. We're a good-looking couple." And Sherry just soaked it in. Not because she was vain, but because she'd been starving for appreciation, just starving for appreciation. And there's a difference between appreciation and approval. But when you've gone a long time without either, they can feel like the same thing. So Mark couldn't get enough of her either. They spent all of their time together. Every text was answered. Every phone call mattered. They laughed. They traveled. They stayed up late talking. And within 6 months, they decided to move in together. Everything looked like it was going exactly the way Sherry had hoped. Then life happened. Not tragedy, just life. Mark started spending more time with his friends. Again. He'd tell Sherry, "I'm going to watch the game with the guys," or "We're getting together tonight." From Mark's perspective, nothing had changed, right? He loved Sherry. He felt secure in the relationship. He thought this was what healthy relationships did. They had lives together, but they also had lives outside of one another. Sherry didn't experience it that way, though. No, she did not. Every time Mark laughed, she felt something she couldn't quite explain. It wasn't really about him going out. It was about what it meant to her. Without realizing it, she wasn't comparing Mark to the men that she had been with, 6 months ago. She was comparing how she felt 6 months ago to how she felt now. These are two different things, okay? Instead of saying, "Mark, I'm feeling insecure. I realize I'm feeling insecure. Can we talk about it?" Sherry became quiet. See, that would be healthy. "Mark, I realize I'm feeling insecure. Can we talk about it?" But no. See, in a partnership, that's the healthy way. But sometimes when we don't know how to be healthy, this is what happens. So Sherry sulked. She withdrew, gave him the business, right? She waited for Mark to notice. And when he didn't, she became even more convinced that something was wrong. So she decided to start going out with her friends. And that sounded really healthy enough, but something happened while she was out. She caught herself looking around the room, hoping someone else would notice her the way Mark used to. Not because she wanted another relationship. Not because she wanted to cheat. She was looking for the feeling she used to have. The feeling of being appreciated. The feeling of being chosen. The feeling she had unknowingly attached to Mark's attention. When she came home, she casually mentioned who had talked to her. Sometimes she'd let Mark wonder where she had been just a little longer than necessary. She wasn't trying to find another man, and she wasn't trying to get the old Mark back. She was trying to get the old Mark back. I'm sorry, I misread that. She was trying to get the old Mark back. Maybe if he got jealous. Maybe if he got worried. Maybe if he realized someone else noticed her, he'd start paying attention again. And the interesting part is that Mark wasn't jealous. He wasn't suspicious. He wasn't even insecure. He was comfortable. Comfortable in a way Sherry interpreted as complacency. Mark was confused. He couldn't understand why the woman who loved spending every moment with him suddenly seemed irritated by everything he did. Sherry began making little comments. Snarky was supposed to be what it was said. Lisa's husband still opens her car door. Jennifer and Tom still have date night every Friday. I wish you wanted to spend time with me like you used to. Mark heard criticism. Sherry thought she was asking for connection. Neither one understood the other one. Now here's what I want us to stop, where I want us to stop just for a moment. I don't think Sherry's biggest problem was Mark, and I don't think Mark's biggest problem was Sherry. I think both of them forgot to have conversations they assumed weren't necessary. We talked about assumption a few weeks ago, right? There's good assumption and not good assumption. So Sherry had expectations. Mark had assumptions. Neither one talked about them. Sherry had spent years building a picture of what love should look like. Maybe it looked like Richard Gere climbing the fire escape in Pretty Woman, right? Maybe it looked like Rip always knowing exactly what Beth needed on Yellowstone, right? Maybe it looked like someone instinctively knowing when she needed reassurance, appreciation, affection, or encouragement. Those stories became scripts, right? They were scripts. The problem wasn't that Sherry had a script. That wasn't the problem. The problem was that she forgot to give Mark a copy of the script. So instead, she thought, if he really loved me, he should know. And how many times have we thought that, right? If they really loved me, they should know. Remember, I tell us don't should on ourselves or anyone else. Or she should know. If they loved me, they would just know. So, but healthy relationships aren't built on mind reading. They're not. They're built on communication. They're built on sharing our values before we're hurt instead of after we're hurt. They're built on talking about what appreciation looks like to us, what respect looks like, what partnership looks like, what quality time looks like. Because your definition may not be the same as mine, or our definitions may not be the same. So here's something else I think is important. Sherry wasn't really asking Mark to appreciate her. She was asking Mark to heal the part of her that still carried the pain of never feeling appreciated before. See? That isn't something another person can sustain. That's not something another person can do for you. You have to do that, heal that pain. So no matter how much they love us, when we unknowingly ask another person to fulfill a value we haven't yet claimed for ourselves, we set a bar they were never meant to reach. Eventually, they'll disappoint us. Not because they're bad people, but because they were trying to fill a place that only we can, where we can begin healing. That's why compatibility is so much more important than attraction. It's knowing our values. It's understanding our intentions. It's recognizing our motivations. It's asking ourselves whether we're choosing someone because we're compatible or because we're hoping they'll take away the old hurt. And before we think this is a story about Sherry, let's remember Mark. Mark has a role in this story too. Mark also had a responsibility. Comfort can quietly become taking someone for granted. So to answer that question earlier, Random, I hope you're still here. Just because we feel secure doesn't mean we stop nurturing the relationship. Partnership requires attention from both people, communication from both people, curiosity from both people. Thank you, Kim. Don't shit on yourself or anything. That's right. That's right. Communication from both people, curiosity from both people. Neither of them was the villain and neither was the victim. Neither of them was broken. They simply stopped communicating and started expecting. Sherry expected Mark to know the script she never shared. Mark expected everything was fine because nothing had been said. And that's the difference between expectation and partnership. Thank you, darling. One assumes and the other communicates. When you're in a partnership, you have to communicate. So I think that that's where compatibility really begins, right? Did y'all relate with that story? Because a lot of times our egos will be like, oh, no. But then when we hear the story, it's like, oh, yeah, I did relate with that. So I hope that story was helpful today for you all. If it was helpful, let me know, in the comments. If you feel like it's going to help somebody else, please feel free to share it. And as always, I want to thank you all for being here today. And We just get to learn how to express. We get to learn about the planets and the moon. We get to learn about, the Persians and the Indians were created. A lot of these theologies, these things that we've learned today, so random. I did. But here's the thing, we chase compatibility, and sometimes it feels right in the moment, and then we communicate, but it doesn't feel like we always get what we want. Yeah, need to get. That's why it's so important, random, to go slow, because a lot of times people in the beginning of relationships show up as their best selves. And that's not to say that they're faking it, because they are their best selves. But we all have a worse self too. And has our worst self been healed? Because we all have it. We all have been hurt. No one in here has not been hurt. Kim, yes, I have to start communicating what I want. Yes, gently, gently, not snarky. Luke, this kind of story is great. You should use them every time to illustrate your point. Thank you very much. For sure on Sundays I do this, but thank you. I'm glad. Yeah, because a lot of times it's easier to relate more with the story, isn't it, Luke? And I will take that into consideration if I can add stories into some of these lives. That's when I'm not fighting with ChatGPT any more than usual, because I just will be typing, telling ChatGPT all this stuff, and then when I get it, it's like that's not that's what I said. I just want you to put it in order. I don't want you to change what I said. On a metaphysical level, bear with me, Stacy. You are not your body. You are not even your mind. You are just the universe getting a kick out of looking at itself. Absolutely. That reminds me of Khalil Gibran, right? Is it or something like that? And then there's Rumi also. Thank you, Random. I'm glad you enjoyed it. So I hope that y'all will take that in this week and just, learning how can I communicate this? Because I had to learn how to communicate it. When I was in my coach's office, I should say, well, what could you have said differently? Because when I would be somebody would be insulted at the way I said something, because I was saying something from my old protective self sometimes, and that sometimes can repulse people. So sometimes I repulsed people with what I said without even meaning to. And I'd get this. One time I worked with the oil men there in Texas, and I had one go to the CEO complaining that I've made him feel stupid or something like this, that I come at him sideways, and I didn't mean to come at him sideways. So I had to learn how to, to say things in a kinder way, so that I wasn't repulsing people. Yes, I was concerned about Grinchy yesterday. That was another reason I cried, because my Grinchy was constipated and I didn't know what to do. I did get on here and on the internet and look up what to do for the Grinch, and I tried to help, and it seems like it must have worked, or that's what it has come down. She started by saying, so I had to fight with ChatGPT last night. I did have to fight with them, and you're right, Luke. Sometimes when I'm writing stuff, even when y'all see me reading my writing, I'll be like, and so I just want ChatGPT to fix the errors that I make, for a certain thing, to outline it. And sometimes it'll be trying to turn it into therapy talk and all of this. And I'm like, no, we're having a talk. This isn't for you to change it into your words. This is my words. Lord have mercy. But we are. Yeah, it's come down to that. I had to tell ChatGPT, you're not real. My stuff is real. We were having a fight. So, yeah. All right. So I hope that this was helpful for you all to discover your compatibility within yourself, so that you're not looking for that outside of yourself. Is when you know it within yourself. Thanks, JR. Right, Luke? Right? It's like crazy. So, yeah. But no more fighting with ChatGPT today. I couldn't believe it. I just wanted it to format what I had put in there, and it changed the whole thing. And then every time I told it to put it back how I wanted it to be, it would give me a list of, okay, I see what you're saying. I see what I did wrong, because ChatGPT is a big suck up. ChatGPT says, oh, I see, and I'm glad they do. It's very mannerly, but it's like, I see what I did wrong, so next time I'm going to do this, this, and this, and this. I'm like, would you just give me my story? And then they're like, okay, I totally understand. I lost track of your being real. I will not forget your reel next time. And so this is what we're going to do. I said, would you give me my story? And then it's like, and so I had to ask them 5 times. They promised me they'll do better next time, though. It's random. Well, I work with tech. If you input prompts prior to dropping your story, you can control the output a little easier. Thank you, Random, because I am technically challenged. So that helps a lot. I appreciate that because me and tech, I didn't grow up in the technical age, so I'm learning to navigate this stuff. So I appreciate all the help y'all give me out here. Thank y'all. All right. So we ready to breathe, y'all? I hope y'all are going to have a super Sunday. Thank you so much for everything. Thank you all for being here. Luke, I'm so happy that I got to see you today. Kim, it's always a pleasure when you're here. And thank you for being, being amazing and keeping the trolls away. It was quiet today. Thank you all who have subscribed way in the past. And those who subscribe today, I appreciate you. I appreciate you feeding this kind of algorithm. Because I know that you could have the Grinch. They want you out here. Come on. Come on. Come to Mama. Come on. Oh, he's trying to bite me, y'all. He's trying to bite me. Do you want me to tap? I have to trick him with tapping. I'm going to tap. Hello? I'm tapping. You going to stay in the house? He's going to stay in the house, y'all. He's onto my tricks. But last time we breathed, he came out after we started breathing. So maybe he will. Maybe he will. Stories are a lesson. Present people with a fact. Present another fact and let the users connect from them themselves. Thank you so much, Luke. Let me write that down. Y'all know how I am because I'll go to sleep and forget. I'm not as young as I used to be. Okay. Here we go. Here we grow. Let's breathe, darlings. Let's breathe. So let's just take a Luke. Namaste. You going to breathe with us? Let's breathe, darlings. I'm sorry Grinch wouldn't come out. JR. Maybe Grinch will come out while we breathe. We're going to breathe. Okay. So let's just take a deep breath in. Hold it. And release. So as we breathe in, think of an intention, motivation. How do you want to feel? What do you want to see? What do you want to do? That's your intention and motivation. Breathe in. Hold it. And release any negativity or stories that you make up that you can't. Just breathe in honor in yourself. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Breathe. Hold it. Release. Breathe in. Hold it. And release. Still one more, last one. Breathe in. Hold it. Thanks again so much for being in here this morning. Yes, breathing. Sent a picture this morning. Okay, good. Did you get my email? I emailed you too the list of the the values. Luke, stories. Okay, yeah. Thank you, Kim. Namaste, Luke. Random. When is your birthday, Random? Happy birthday. If it was past, happy belated birthday. If it's coming up, happy birthday. No, I'm not dizzy. Thank you. Okay, thank you for removing that, Kim. All right. All right. So I hope you all, oh, good. Regulated and regenerated, I hope. I hope you all are going to have a super Sunday. I got out there in the dark this morning. I feel so accomplished. These bushes had been cut down around my house, and, you know, they'd been out there, and I'd cut some things, you know, a few weeks ago, and I needed to haul them down. And so they've been through the neighborhood, you know, cutting the bushes by the lines. And so I drug the stuff down the street. I made 4 trips, so I got my steps in, Kim, drug stuff down the street, put it on the pile that was down the street, and then I came home and cleaned all that up. Oh, I appreciate you too, Luke. Thank you so much. I'm glad we got to see you this morning. And JR, we appreciate you too. Random, the 13th of August. Okay, so you got 2 weeks. Mine's going to be Thursday. So I'm gonna, oh, Ramon, hello, hello. It's good to see you. I'm going to be creating content today because Thursday on my Facebook group, we're having our meeting Thursday, Kim. So I will see some of you on Thursday talking about our evolving self. So thank you all so much. Thanks, Luke, once again, and Darth Clorox, and for teaching us about the moon and the planets and the stars. And you always look forward to all of you. Yes, JR. Yes, I look forward to your comments, Random, your comments, and Kim always, of course. And I appreciate getting to see all of you, knowing that you're here with sharing energy with me. It's amazing. Amazing. So have a super Sunday. That used to be like for the racetracks, right? Random. You know, I always thought that miniatures were like the citrus trees. Aw. Kim, oh, I get to see you on your birthday. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. The werewolves. Yes, the werewolves too. Oh! Random, thank you so much. And happy birthday to you on the 13th. Let me write that down too. Because after I go to sleep, things just slip my mind. Laugh. It's going to happen to a lot of you too. With twosies. 2 snaps up, a twist, and a kiss. Y'all remember that show? Thank y'all so much. Did Grinch come out? Oh, okay, Grinch, come say hi to people. Come say hi to your fan club. Come on. Come on. Come say hi. Say hi. Okay, y'all. Thank you so much. Y'all have a super Sunday. Lots of love. Bye.